Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast. I'm Simon Marks in Washington, D.C., and these are the top headlines of this Tuesday. The Kremlin rejects US President Joe Biden's warning that Russia may be planning a cyber attack against the United States in response to the economic sanctions imposed on Russia by the West.
Shops like these are usually found empty for supplies, for essential supplies, and that shows that how dire the situation is, that even shops are empty and people are stocking up.
With Russia intensifying attacks on Kiev, more and more people are fleeing the region to seek shelter in western Ukrainian cities like Lviv. Ukraine's strategic city of Mykolaiv is holding out against the Russian invasion, in part due to the tenacity of its residents. The southern city is a key obstacle for Russian forces now, trying to move west from Crimea to take Odessa. The World Health Organization says that about 500,000 refugees from Ukraine who have fled to Poland need support for mental health disorders, and that 30,000 of them are dealing with severe mental health problems. And China's financial hub Shanghai reports 865 new cases of COVID-19, a fifth consecutive daily record for locally transmitted cases as the Omicron variant complicates efforts to stop the virus from spreading. It is day 27 of Russia's war on Ukraine, and Moscow may be moving from blitzkrieg to Plan B, amid growing evidence that the Russian invasion has stalled and certainly has not succeeded the lightning takeover of the country that President Vladimir Putin anticipated. Now the Russians are pounding Ukraine into submission, bombs hitting residential buildings, shopping malls, office blocks, hospitals, museums, streets and bridges. The Ukrainian capital is under another 35-hour curfew. It will last until 7 a.m. on Wednesday.
Комендантська година в Києві та області знову буде посилена. Розпочнеться вона сьогодні о 20:00 і триватиме до 7 ранку 23 березня, тобто до післязавтра. Магазини, аптеки, заправки, установи працювати завтра не будуть.
Kiev has been facing intense shelling since the weekend. At least 8 people were killed after Russian bombs hit a shopping centre on Sunday night. Cars in the adjacent parking lot caught fire following the shelling at the Retroville shopping centre. A powerful explosion later rocked the same site on Monday. Firefighters immediately deployed to douse the flames. Moscow, meanwhile, has accused Kiev of storing rockets in shopping malls to aid Ukrainian troops amid the conflict. During a briefing on Monday, Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov said that the shopping complex was allegedly used to reload rocket launchers and store rockets themselves.
На окраине Киева, в районе Виноградарь, украинские националистические подразделения в течение нескольких дней прикрывались жилыми домами и вели обстрелы из реактивных систем залпового огня по российским военнослужащим. При этом площади, расположенного рядом торгового центра, использовались в качестве крупной базы для хранения реактивных боеприпасов и перезарядки систем залпового огня. На видеокадрах объективного контроля хорошо видно, как в торговый центр на окраине Киева въезжает украинская установка залпового огня для укрытия после очередного залпа и перезарядки ракет. Высокоточным оружием большой дальности ночью 21 марта была уничтожена батарея украинских реактивных систем залпового огня и база хранения их боеприпасов в неработающем торговом центре. Хотим еще раз обратить внимание западных средств массовой информации Нами представлены абсолютные доказательства преступного использования киевским националистическим режимом гражданских объектов в жилых кварталах Киева и в других городах Украины в качестве огневых позиций, артиллерии и реактивных систем.
President Zelensky, meanwhile, is urging all Ukrainians who are currently under Russian occupation to fight for their freedom.
I appeal to everyone in our country and to those abroad, in cities and villages, those who are free and who are temporarily under occupation, in Crimea, in Donetsk, in Luhansk, where they must also fight for freedom, not sit and wait.
Areas around Kiev remain under Ukrainian control, but Russian forces attempting to encircle the capital and cut it off are facing strong Ukrainian resistance and some serious logistical problems, with many vehicles running out of fuel. Ukraine's main focus has been to keep Russian artillery out of range of the city centre, but shelling continues to cause casualties and destroy homes. With Russia intensifying its attacks on Kyiv, more and more people are fleeing the capital to seek shelter in western Ukrainian cities like Lviv. It's considered safer, certainly compared to the Ukrainian capital. Our correspondent Anas Malik is at the heart of the conflict, and he sent us this special report of the journey he made from Kyiv to the European-facing western city of Lviv.
We're driving on the road of Lviv, the normal route from Zotomir. Therefore, we've taken the longer route. You'd see a couple of checkpoints out on the road, some trenches as well, and these checkpoints are usually guarded or bordered by Ukrainian military with the help of what they call our volunteers. You'd see a Ukrainian flag on it as well. This is almost halfway between Lviv and Kiev, and this route that we have taken, more of a detour, is considered to be relatively safe. We're seeing just deployments around, more and more checkpoints, some artillery and ordnance deployment as well. We're not, of course, allowed to film that. But by and large, this road is peaceful. It's the longer route. It takes about 9.5 to 10 hours to get to Lviv in the west from Kyiv. But we're almost halfway through. We've taken a detour. We went 150 kilometers south and then came towards Odessa from Uman towards Lviv. Now, shops like these are usually found empty for supplies, for essential supplies, and that shows that how dire the situation is, that even stock shops are empty and people are stocking up.
I thought it's not possible, but when I wake up at Sunday morning, my friend call me and tell that the war begin. You should take your family and move out from the city. But it was very difficult. In first 2 days I stayed in Kiev. It was very difficult to move out from the city because a lot of people try to do this and roads was overloaded.
So where's your family now?
Now my family in a safe place. They move out of Ukraine. We have friends in Europe, so they call my family and my parents.
So did you voluntarily choose to stay back, or was it because of the rule that was in place that you could not go out?
I think about it for me, and I should stay.
So almost 10 hours later, we've just arrived in the city of Lviv. The city is more of a ghost town, and rightly so, because it's under curfew. On the way, we took a long route because that was considered relatively safe. We were stopped at numerous checkpoints, allowed only after our accreditation was verified. We saw military convoys moving, and 10 hours later we finally made it to Lviv, and this is how the city looks. There's a very deserted look. It's under curfew right now. In the city of Lviv, we were just stopped very near to the Rhino Square, which is the city center. It's a very prominent square which houses a couple of ancient time cathedrals as old as about 1400 years old, including the Armenian Cathedral. The police did quite of a thorough security check, including checking our accreditations, verifying them, verifying our credentials, and then they allowed us to go through because it's curfew, so nobody is actually allowed right now. This is how the city looks like.
The Ukrainian president is rejecting Russian deadlines to surrender key cities to halt the military invasion. In an interview with America's NBC News, Volodymyr Zelensky spoke about Moscow asking Ukraine to hand over Kharkiv, Mariupol and Kiev as a possible resolution to the conflict. Zelensky also doubled down on a call for direct talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin as the key to ending the war.
The question is more difficult than simply acknowledging them. This is another ultimatum, and we are not prepared for ultimatums. But we have the possible solution, resolution for these three items, key items. What needs to be done is for President Putin to start talking, start the dialogue, instead of living in the informational bubble without oxygen. I think that's where he is. He is in this bubble. He's getting this information, and you don't know how realistic that information is that he's getting.
The city of Mariupol has already been under heavy siege for almost 3 weeks now. The southern port has been relentlessly assaulted by Russia. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell described it as a massive war crime. Mariupol has suffered from some of the heaviest bombardments since Russia launched its invasion last month. Ukraine on Monday defied a Russian demand that its forces should lay down arms before dawn in Mariupol, which remains a pivotal target in Putin's war. If it's seized by Putin's forces, it would provide a land bridge between Russian forces in Crimea to the southwest and Russian-controlled territory to the north and the east. The battle for Mariupol is also symbolic for both Kiev and Moscow. It's a port city on the Azov Sea. It is the home ground to the Azov Battalion, a Ukrainian militia unit with far-right sympathies. At least 200,000 residents remain trapped in the city without food, water or power. The United Nations has recorded 925 civilian deaths, including 70 children, but fatalities are almost certainly higher. Mariupol officials say the death toll in that city alone has surpassed 2,000 amid Russia's indiscriminate shelling. And some parts of the city are controlled by Russian forces, while some remain under Ukrainian control. Ukraine has accused Russian forces of conducting their first strike on the Black Sea port of Odessa. Local authorities say that shelling hit residential buildings on the city's outskirts, raising the spectre of a continuing Russian attack. Thousands of women and children are now being forced to flee, leaving their loved ones behind. Here's a report about one family escaping Odessa.
At a train station in Odessa, there are tearful goodbyes as families separate. Some passengers on this night train are on their way to safety. Among them is Lyudmila Lichko and her two sons.
We were all scared because it was already uncalm for several days. For several times a day, the air raid sirens. There were already airstrikes where we lived. The neighboring village suffered a lot from bombing. And since our house is on the outskirts, the shrapnel could directly reach us. It was terrifying. That's why we decided to leave. It was very dangerous.
Lichko's husband Dennis stayed behind.
It was very hard. It was very hard for us to separate, but we were just forced to leave. It is impossible to live in such conditions the whole time.
Passengers on the train make small talk. Some have brought pets. The night train is just one step in the Lichko family's journey. Already on a bus before the train from Odessa, they board another at Izmail. It takes them to a port on the Danube where they get on a ferry to Romania.
We plan to go to Poland. We have relatives that live there. They can take us in for some time. Further on, if the situation calms down and everything will be fine, the situation will be fine for sure, we will return to our home.
Russia denies targeting civilians in what it is calling a special operation in Ukraine. The United Nations says nearly 6.5 million people have been uprooted in the war, exceeding its worst forecasts.
For the Baltic nations on NATO's eastern flank, the stakes in the Ukraine conflict are enormously high. The West has assured Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia of NATO protection from Russia if it's needed. They are all members of the NATO alliance. But fears are growing that Moscow's ambitions may not stop with Ukraine.
Hours after Russia's attack on Ukraine began, 5 German warships set sail for Latvia to help protect the most vulnerable part of NATO's eastern flank. Russia's invasion has propelled the alliance into what Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg has called a new normal. It looks a lot like the past. NATO was founded in 1949 to defend against the Soviet threat. Now a new Iron Curtain could fall across Europe. NATO needs to ensure its members are not behind it if it does. NATO has expanded eastwards since the 1990s, bringing in former Soviet states such as Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia, where these French troops disembarked last week. A single overland corridor connects them to the rest of NATO territory, and it's squeezed between the heavily armed Russian enclave of Kaliningrad and Moscow ally Belarus. An emboldened Russia could encircle the Baltic states and cut them off from the rest of the alliance. That's where the Latvian mission comes in, a regular mine-clearing exercise that was brought forward by Russia's invasion. One goal is to keep the waterway open, the other is a show of strength. This was German naval commander Terje Schmidt-Eliasson on board the Elbe in Riga's harbour.
We will be 12 units from 6 countries, and we are essentially showing our presence in the eastern Baltic.
Direct confrontation between NATO and Russia could touch off a global conflict. One retired NATO commander told Reuters the alliance is considering whether deterrence is enough. Not according to Lithuanian Foreign Minister Gabrielius Landsbergis last week.
We are convinced in the Baltic states that we need to move from deterrence to a standing defense, and has to come from NATO planning leadership. That they would start looking into the region differently than they had throughout the last 2 decades.
Since the invasion, NATO allies have also moved 5 aircraft carriers into European waters, increased the number of warplanes in NATO airspace, and more than doubled the size of combat units in the Baltics and Poland. NATO also faces a return to mechanised warfare and a huge increase in defence spending.
A little bit of breaking news now from Russia, and opposition campaigner Alexei Navalny has been handed an additional 9-year jail sentence in a fraud case. Navalny and his supporters reject the allegations that have been brought against him as trumped up, but that additional 9-year sentence handed down to Alexei Navalny today on the very day that his anti-corruption foundation published a video claiming that one of the world's largest luxury yachts is owned by Russian President Vladimir Putin. The super yacht Scheherazade is currently docked in Italy, and the foundation is now urging the authorities there to seize it. Navalny's researchers reportedly discovered the identity of the Scheherazade's crew members. Many of them are allegedly Russian nationals employed by Russia's Federal Protective Service, the FSO. It's the same government agency responsible for providing security to high-ranking Russian officials and state assets. Navalny's team reports that one of the crew members also worked previously on another luxury yacht linked with the Russian president. Reportedly, Navalny's researchers used open-source research to unearth details about the Scheherazade, including its crew phone numbers and credit score data. Tracing ownership of these super yachts can be a mammoth task, especially considering the use of shell companies to camouflage their actual ownership. The Scheherazade flies the flag of the Cayman Islands. It is owned by an asset company registered in the Marshall Islands. This type of offshore ownership arrangement is a challenge for law enforcement agencies as they seek to track an asset's owners. The word yacht doesn't really do justice to the luxury vessel allegedly owned by the Russian leader. It is worth an estimated $700 million. The 459 feet long luxury boat is one of the world's 20 largest yachts. It comes along with a helipad, a swimming pool, and a movie theatre, and it even has a security system capable of shooting down drones. The vessel was built by German shipmaker Lürsen in 2020, and according to Marine Traffic, it is currently located in Marina di Carrara on Italy's west coast. The New York Times claimed earlier this month that Italian law enforcement have opened an inquiry into the vessel. The latest revelations come amid a flurry of US and EU sanctions sparked by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, targeting Russian oligarchs and their Western assets. Western law enforcement has already frozen a number of super yachts owned by Russian oligarchs in the past few weeks. In bad news, particularly for Putin's Scheherazade, the Italian police boarded and froze another yacht owned by Andrei Melnichenko just 10 days ago. Melnichenko is one of the Russian oligarchs sanctioned by the EU. Meanwhile, a petition has been launched on the platform change.org urging the Swiss authorities to expel a former Russian gymnast who is allegedly Vladimir Putin's girlfriend. Former gymnast Alina Kabayeva is an Olympic gold medalist and one of the most celebrated athletes in rhythmic gymnastics history. Several media outlets have claimed she's Putin's girlfriend. The Russian president, however, has never officially confirmed their relationship. Known as Russia's most flexible woman, Kabayeva spent 6 years as a member of parliament representing Putin's United Russia party. The online petition has so far received more than 50,000 signatures from Russia, Belarus and Ukraine. It comes amid reports that Kabayeva and her children were sent to Switzerland after the war in Ukraine began. Kabayeva and Putin reportedly have 4 children, all of whom were born in Switzerland. The Swiss government says that it does not have any solid information on whether Kabayeva and her children are in the country or not. According to some media reports, Kabayeva's close circle has urged her to return to Moscow to persuade Putin to end the war in Ukraine. This comes as Russia continues to launch fresh attacks on Ukrainian cities, displacing millions of people. And that's all we have time for on this edition of WION Live Broadcast from Washington, D.C. I'm Simon Marks. I'll be back at the same time, same place tomorrow with the Wednesday edition of our live broadcast from Washington. Stay with WION for updates on Ukraine and all the other stories making news around the world. World is one.
There are many other... this is right, Arab.